22 million Americans struggle with sleep apnea. About 50 to 70 million suffer from some type of sleep disorder. And this is a huge deal because sleep is the number one thing that impacts your health. If your sleep is not good and your health is a priority, then you have to think about your sleep. It totally dictates your level of health. There's no way around it. I wish there was.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today we are going to dive into how sleep dictates your health. Specifically, we're going to talk about sleep apnea and how you could potentially reverse that and how you can go about it, how it impacts your life and your overall health, brain health, all of it. But we're also going to dive into the importance of sleep overall, things you need to know about sleep, and then practical strategies that you can implement to improve your overall level of health and sleep in general. So stick with me to the end. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and leave comments below. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, please do follow us and leave a review because that allows the algorithm to pick things up and then we can share with more people and impact more people in a positive way. All right, so let's dive into sleep because it is key. I see clients at PhD all the time who talk about having poor sleep and dealing with sleep apnea and hating their CPAP machines. Specifically, I remember chatting with Michelle, and she came in, and that was her whole reason to be motivated to drop the weight, was that she hated the CPAP machine. And she showed me when she came in all of the marks that were on her face. They were like permanent marks from her CPAP machine because her skin was so delicate. She also had type 2 diabetes, which made her skin just really sensitive and very delicate. And I wrote down her stats here, but in 2 months, she was 25 pounds down and barely was using any more pressure in her CPAP machine. And at the end of her program, 60 pounds down and no more CPAP. She was so ecstatic over being able to drop that. She was with a partner and she was hating to even sleep next to her partner with that machine because she just felt embarrassed about it. She thought that it was such a nuisance. She didn't like to travel. So she was so ecstatic about dropping the CPAP machine more so than dropping the 60 pounds. Then I had Mark, and Mark struggled with obstructive sleep apnea for years. He woke up exhausted. He had memory issues, trouble focusing. He tried the CPAP, but it was so uncomfortable and didn't give him the relief that he expected, that he was seeking. So his doctor sent him to PhD because he saw all of the patients we were able to help reverse sleep apnea. And he was, let's see, I have his stats here, 50 pounds down in 14 weeks, and he noticed huge improvements in his symptoms, less breathing pauses. He woke up feeling rested, and eventually he totally reversed his sleep apnea. His energy soared. He no longer needed a CPAP, and he started traveling again. And that, too, is what he was most excited about. He loved the 50 pounds down, but he was just an avid traveler, and he couldn't do that. He didn't want to do it while tugging around and toting around his CPAP machine. So he was excited, totally changed his life. So about a week ago, as I was writing this episode, I had a client, Rich Jacob, come in, and he was like, oh my gosh, I've got a miracle that just happened. And he went into his doctor, did a sleep test. He had sleep apnea and was on a CPAP machine, which he hated. And he no longer needed the CPAP machine. I wrote his stats down too. So he's 19 weeks, 55 pounds down, no more blood pressure meds, and no more CPAP machine. And his doctors couldn't believe it because they think he's had sleep apnea since he was a child. He lost a job because of it a few years ago. And they do believe that he's also going to get off all of his sleep medications within the next 3 weeks. I mean, talk about a miracle. So if you struggle with sleep apnea, if you got a CPAP machine, there are probably a lot of things you can do to at least reduce the pressure that you need through that machine or get rid of that thing altogether. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So 22 million Americans struggle with sleep apnea. About 50 to 70 million suffer from some type of sleep disorder. And this is a huge deal because sleep is the number one thing that impacts your health. If your sleep is not good and your health is a priority, then you have to think about your sleep. It totally dictates your level of health. There's no way around it. I wish there was. I don't like sleeping. I would love to just stay up and be productive and do things and learn things, but gosh darn it, we've got to sleep. We were just made that way. So some specifics about obstructive sleep apnea. Now, I'm going to be talking about primarily obstructive sleep apnea through this show, but I'll talk a little bit about central sleep apnea as well. But in general, when you don't get continuous oxygen to your brain, it kills your brain cells. And the brain is so oxygen dependent that you really only have to skip a little bit of oxygen supply to the brain to see irreversible brain damage. When you've got sleep apnea and you have those pauses in your breath, it can cause your brain to age significantly more rapidly. Those who have sleep apnea are 5 times more likely to be depressed. You actually have a doubled risk of developing depression if your sleep apnea is moderate or severe. You have a higher risk of developing dementia in general. What's interesting is the overall blood flow pattern to the brain when you've got sleep apnea is really similar to the same pattern that we see in dementia. And you actually have a doubled risk of developing Alzheimer's disease if you have sleep apnea. And so getting a diagnosis of your sleep apnea is really important. You've got to treat it either by using the CPAP machine or by making lifestyle changes and dropping the excess weight and following a low inflammatory diet. So make sure if you think you've got sleep apnea that you do go into your doctor and you get it checked out. And if you do have it, then you want to make sure that you are wearing your CPAP machine until you make these lifestyle changes so that you no longer need it. Okay, so sleep apnea, what is it specifically? Well, it's basically a hiccup in your breathing patterns while you're sleeping. So I want you to imagine that you take a big breath and then you pause and then you continue to breathe. And the brain can't handle that pause. There's 2 types of sleep apnea. There's the obstructive and there's the central. The obstructive is basically like a traffic jam in your breathing pathway. And what I mean by that is as you develop this excess fat weight in the body, it actually puts pressure on your delicate airways. As you continue to age, your muscles in the airways become weaker and become narrower, so they're at a higher risk of being impacted by this excess fat weight. Now, for every pound of excess fat weight that you're carrying in your belly, it's about 5 pounds of pressure pulling off of the spine when you're standing up. So you can imagine when you're laying down, it's that much pressure, 4 pounds per 1 pound of excess belly fat in there, pushing on those airways. You also develop deposits of fat around the throat and those muscles, so that can restrict the pathway there. And then also your genetics dictate the size of your airways. And if you drink a lot, if you smoke, if you've got allergies, that can make the whole situation worse. Central sleep apnea is where there's a miscommunication between the brain and the muscles that conduct the breathing. And for some reason, a communication glitch between those 2 areas. That can be resulting from underlying health issues, heart conditions, or certain medications can cause that glitch between the brain and the muscles. So then how does it affect us in general? Well, it affects you significantly. I want you to imagine playing a sport and getting interrupted all the time. It gets pretty frustrating and you actually can't accomplish anything. And that's how the body and the brain feels when it keeps getting interrupted by those pauses when you're breathing. You might snore or you might just have a total pause in your breathing. If you're listening to this on YouTube, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me if you've got sleep apnea or if you have a partner, a spouse, a friend who's got it and what it sounds like when they're sleeping next to you. It's pretty darn bad and it can be really scary. So this chronic lack of oxygen from recurrent episodes is what causes this potentially irreversible damage in the body and the brain. Common symptoms of OSA or obstructive sleep apnea are chronic daytime sleepiness. You're just always feeling tired and foggy because you're not dropping into these good REM and non-REM cycles that you've got to be in. You've got headaches, you're more irritable, you've got memory and focus issues like I said earlier. So now let's talk about the most important part is how you're going to overcome this, and then let's dive into specific things you need to know about sleep in general, and then just overall good strategies to help you enhance your sleep quality. So with the sleep apnea specifically, you need to lose the weight. There's just no way around it. If you've got sleep apnea and you don't want to have it anymore and you do not want to have this thing, it's not a good thing to have, then you've got to lighten the load and you've got to drop the weight. You want to follow a low inflammatory diet. And that's what I talk about a lot in these episodes, but eating a whole food-based diet, getting your animal proteins in there. If you're open to eating that, that's the best type of protein that your body can absorb and utilize. You want to make sure that you're getting your healthy veggies in there. If you're going to do fruits, more of the berries, they're higher in fiber, higher in antioxidants, lower in sugar, keeping those insulin levels down, keeping inflammation low. Your healthy fats that can come from fatty fish, mackerel, sardines, fatty cuts of meat if you like that, avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil, nuts and seeds, maybe some full-fat plain Greek yogurt. Those are some great sources of low-inflammatory foods. Anything from a package or a box, anything at a convenience store likely is going to be promoting inflammation and weight gain and this sleep apnea. Exercise to keep your muscles strong. And you know, my favorite types of exercise are lifting something heavy, not heavy enough to cause any injury, but overloading those muscles, and then some high-intensity interval training. And don't let this scare you. Start off small and easy. So I like the stationary bike just because it's low impact on the joints, but this might be getting on a bike and just riding for about 5 minutes to warm up, and then pushing hard, even as short as 10 seconds. Push really hard and then pull back real easy. Push hard again for 10 seconds, maybe 10 to 30 seconds, and then pull back. Do it about 10 times and then cool down. If you can only do it 3 times, start there, but start somewhere. That type of high-intensity interval training and the resistance training helps to build your muscle mass and helps to burn fat and helps to keep inflammation low, which is what you want if you've got sleep apnea. And then just structurally, you can sleep on your side rather than on your back because it allows the excess weight to fall to the side and not put pressure on those delicate airways, and then follow good sleep hygiene, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So things to know specifically about sleep is that sleep happens in cycles. You've got this REM and non-REM cycle. It lasts about 90 minutes. You want to repeat that for about 8 hours worth, and each stage contributes to something unique, either with memory consolidation, emotional processing, cognitive function. So each of those cycles are really important that you go through. When you got sleep apnea, you get interrupted and those cycles aren't fully completed, which is why you struggle with fogginess when you're awake and memory issues, focus issues. Number 2 is you want to aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep so you get plenty of those cycles. And usually less than 7 hours is going to negatively impact your health. There was a study looking at weight loss specifically, and it looked at 2 groups of people, and they divided them into groups associated with how much they were sleeping. So there was a group that slept less than 7 hours and a group that slept more than 7 hours. And the group that slept more ate more and weighed less than the group who slept less than 7 hours. So usually the goal with sleep apnea is also to drop the weight. So 2 and 2 go together, that you've got to sleep more than 7 hours if you can, and all in a row, not broken up into different naps. Number 3 is consistency. So just like I said earlier, treat your body like that infant where you go to bed at the same time each night and you wake up at the same time each morning. I know this is actually really hard to do because oftentimes we short sleep during the week and then we try to catch up on the weekend. And we sleep in on the weekend and we wake up consistently through the weekdays. If you think about this, this is almost like simulating jet lag. If you wake up at 5:36 in the morning on the weekdays, and then you wake up at 8:30, 9 o'clock, it's like flying from the East Coast to the West Coast, and that is really stressful on the body. So as much as you can do, you want to squeeze that window of inconsistency on your wake up and sleep time. And I personally struggle with this, so I am right here with you if you are struggling. And together, we're just going to continue to work on it. It's not perfection, it's progress, right? Number 4 is your sleep environment. You want to make sure that your environment is cool, about 65 degrees or so. You want to make sure that it's very dark. So if you've got windows, you want to make sure that you have blinds there. You want to make sure that it's quiet. If you've got a dog that's like their toenails are clipping along on the floor, that's going to be distracting. If the dog wakes you up and you have to go let it out, if you can find a solution for that, it's going to be huge for your memory and your overall health. And I know these things can be hard to do, but I just want to put this out there as to what your goals are. And then all of those things that I just mentioned helped your body produce melatonin, which helps you go to sleep and get restful sleep. So I talked about these few different things that can help, but My husband, he likes it really cold, and he'll use something called an Uller, which goes down on his mattress and he lays on it. And it can be like a real cold plunge that he's just hibernating in because he is part polar bear. And then I sleep on the other side in a normal kind of cooler temperature and get great sleep. And then number 5 is blue light exposure. So the blue light that you get from the screens coming in doesn't allow your body to produce melatonin. So the TV, the Kindle, I don't even know if a Kindle has blue light in it. Something to think about there. I don't know. Yeah, it shouldn't have blue light in there. And then from your phones, though, that for sure has blue light. So you want to make sure that you are not getting that blue light exposure. And even from the lights coming down in your environment, in your home, have a lot of blue light. So I usually wear these orange, crazy looking glasses at night. And my favorite brand is Raw Optic, RA Optic. And they have a really great type of lens that filters all type of blue light through there. And it does make a huge difference for me. If I don't wear those when the sun goes down, then I have big trouble falling asleep. So basic strategies to improve your sleep. Number 1, prioritize it and make it non-negotiable. Number 2, limit caffeine and alcohol because those are going to inhibit your ability to drop into those sleep cycles we talked about. Number 3 is regular exercise, but try to get the exercise a few hours before you go to bed. So if you are a late night exerciser, totally cool, but you should give yourself about 2 to 3 hours after that exercise session before you head to bed. So take that into consideration. See the sun in the morning. The health of your sleep actually starts first thing when you wake up. And so our bodies, as a human species, are meant to be outside, touching the ground, seeing the sun, being out in nature. And a lot of us live in cities. I get that, but you still can go outside and stare up at the sun. I mean, watch it for your eye health, of course. But your eyes do need to see the sun because it starts your circadian rhythm. So it actually sets you up for success going to sleep. Number 5 is have a pre-sleep routine with no screens. So again, that's the TV, that's your phone. Instead, it might be nice to read or take a bath or to meditate. Avoid heavy meals right before bed. There's actually a lot of science showing that if you eat before bed, it actually shifts your metabolism more into the digestion burning state, and it doesn't allow you to get into that deep REM sleep. Also, there's a specific genetic SNP, I have it, that if you eat close to bedtime, then it increases your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So it's important to know yourself. It's in general not good to eat right up close to when you're heading to bed. And then napping. Napping is kind of a skill set. It's a science. And so research shows that a nap should be about 10 to 20 minutes, no longer, to avoid that grogginess that you get when you wake up from a longer nap. And you don't want to do any kind of napping after 2 p.m. because then that negatively impacts your sleep that night. I like in general to wrap all of this up, to summarize it, to think about the 10-3-2-1-0 formula. It's a great formula. So this means 10 hours before bed, no more caffeine. 3 hours before bed, no more alcohol and no more food. 2 hours before bed, no more work. 1 hour before bed, no more screens. And 0 is the number of times that you're going to hit the snooze button. Oh my gosh, that one is so hard for me. The 0 snooze buttons. Even this morning, I hit it. I'm going to put it out there and you guys can hold me accountable to my failure of waking up and not hitting the snooze button. So it is 0 times. I'm having you guys hold me accountable that for the next month, 30 days, so I can establish this new healthy habit that I'm not going to hit the darn snooze button. You know what? I think I'm going to have it removed from my phone. Can we do that? Can you take the snooze button off of the phone? Because I need 0 snooze buttons. Okay, you guys, that's it for today. My hope in this episode is that if you have sleep apnea and you struggle with it, that you are empowered to create positive change in your life and take the steps to either reduce the severity of it or totally reverse it. For those of you who don't have sleep apnea, I hope you got some great tips and knowledge on the overall importance of sleep and how you can enhance the quality of your own. So again, if you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe, leave a comment, share with me any information about your sleep, and if you've reversed your sleep apnea through creating change in your life, motivate us here. Share it within the community. Let me know if there's a way to remove the snooze button from my phone. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please follow us and leave a review. So remember, you've got to step up to make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and don't negotiate with your body. See you next time.